G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by CrowCast, of course. A bit of a struggle this week, but we got there in the end over North Melbourne, so let's crack straight into it and talk all about it. Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap Round 4 versus North Melbourne. A bit of a struggle, but we got there in the end. Nikki, how are you?
Oh, it was a very frustrating game today, but it was nice to actually hear the Crows song 3 times on one weekend.
Yeah, well, there was that, I guess. But, oh my God, that was painful to watch after the first, 10 minutes or so.
And then the last quarter was okay.
A freaking nightmare until the end, yeah. They kept us guessing. Mac is around. He's struggling with technology at the moment, so he'll be with us at some stage, but he's not with us right now. So, and we do have a bit of a special guest tonight, a bit later on. One of our esteemed listeners. G'day to everyone who's in Discord, everyone who's watching and listening on YouTube and also Twitch. Get around us. If you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe and a like. That helps us with the algorithm. Nikki, why don't we just go straight into talking about
the ladder?
No, the weekend's games. Come on, mate. You know,
baby.
You know what's going on.
There was a pause, and I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be me.
All right, let's whip through these while Macca works himself out, and hopefully he'll be on pretty soon. Thursday night, Nikki, the Swans getting up over Essendon, poor old Benny Rutten. Sydney by 3 points in the end, 83-80. Not a bad game to watch, actually. On Friday night, we had Port. Another close one. Port getting up over Richmond, 79-77. Richmond just struggling at the minute, and Port, I don't know about you, Nick, but I didn't find them terribly convincing, but they got up.
No. A Richmond supporting friend and I, she's based in Melbourne, there was a lot of messaging back and forth of, are you yelling at the television as much as I am?
Yeah.
So I think I was yelling at the umpires and I was yelling at Richmond players.
Right.
Both teams are a little struggling.
Yeah, they're not at full strength at the moment, but don't mind. It's early in the season.
So a few injuries going on with Port as well.
Yeah, Port, I think it's good news for Dersma, isn't it? I haven't heard anything today, but I think it's good news for Dersma. But that looked a bit nasty when he went down. But was that Dersma or Butters? I always get the two confused.
Dersma, I think it was Butters.
Butters. One of the two. Whatever. He's all right. Saturday, the Bulldogs convincingly over Brisbane 73-54. 19-point win there for the Bulldogs, just going along their merry way. St Kilda, what the hell happened with West Coast? I looked at this game about halfway through the third quarter, and West Coast were absolutely cruising. And, St Kilda win going away, like by 20 points. I couldn't believe it.
I was like, there's actually men's games on Saturday. I was a little focused on a couple of other games that were going on that day. But yeah, I did see some of those scores, and I saw the end result. Like you, I checked earlier on, and it was like, oh yeah, it's going as expected. And like Brad Crouch's BOG,
yeah,
and St Kilda won. I'm like,
what's going on? What's going on with the world? Brad Crouch did all right, 26 posies. So yeah, whatever. West Coast obviously caught the early plane home. We also had Carlton getting up over the Suns. The Suns will be disappointed with that, I think. Carlton in the end by 11 points. Looked the fitter side, 70-59. As predicted, and I hope people got on because it paid a right, the Giants get up over Collingwood 90-60 by 30 points in the end, although it was a close tussle for large parts of the game. But 30 points in the end is a fairly convincing margin. GWS would be happy with that, given that they've got half a team out at the moment.
Sometimes that's kind of what happens when you just those little couple of players down. Everybody has to lift.
Yeah,
they do.
Yep.
It's like, well, where was that effort beforehand?
Yep, that's right. As Malcolm Blight used to say, if you play above yourself, then that's your new benchmark. So there's no excuses for the Giants. Although Collingwood, to be honest with you, I reckon they're rabble. Like at the moment, their admin's cooked. I reckon Nathan Buckley's cooked. The players look like they're going through the motions. They're a club that's very much like we were, I reckoned, in parts of 2018 and 2019, I reckon. Going to need a bit of a regeneration, that club, I think. Today, apart from us, we had Melbourne convincingly over Geelong, 85-60. Melbourne there by 25 points. Geelong also just going at the moment. And the late game, Freo ended up getting up.
Nasty injury to Stephen May.
Oh, I didn't see it. So, what happened?
Fractured eye socket.
Ooh, not
accidental elbow to the face from Hawkins, and it was accidental. Swelled up immediately. And they confirmed that, fractured eye socket. It was taken straight to hospital.
Yeah, right. Okay. Freo getting up in the last game, 96-81 over Hawthorn, 15 points there. Let's have a quick look at the ladder, I think, while we're here. We have... I was
just going to say on that Freo Hawthorn game, that was a horrible one to watch. They were both as bad as each other.
Oh, who'd watch that game? Seriously. So we got 3 teams on top. Bulldogs, Melbourne and Sydney, all on 4 wins. We have Port and us on 12. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that we'd be even on points with Port after 4 rounds, eh?
Not Kane Corns.
No. West Coast, Carlton, Richmond making up the 8. Fremantle, Geelong and St Kilda on similar points, but just outside. Essendon, Gold Coast, Collingwood, Giants, Brisbane and Hawthorn also on 0 points. 4 points, I should say, and North Melbourne yet to score. So, North Melbourne, I think we've made North Melbourne look good today, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So, look, not a bad round of matches. There's a couple of really good games. The Friday night, Thursday night games are really good. And, of course, ours was pretty good. And I reckon, why don't we start talking about it right now, Nick?
Oh, we could do that.
Adelaide 16-13-109 defeated North Melbourne 10 goals 8-68. In the end, a margin of 41 points. But it didn't look like a 41-point win coming up at three-quarter time.
Not after a goalless third quarter.
That's right. Teams don't often win when they have a goalless quarter, It was terrible to watch in that second and third quarter where they've kicked 7 goals to 3 in those 2 quarters. And we've ended up having an 8-goal last quarter to 1 to get over the line. But, it was a struggle to watch. It really was a struggle to watch.
I was scrolling through Twitter a lot. So just do I want to watch the screen?
Yeah, well, we were on. There's a few of us on Discord chat, of course, and it started off all right. They just looked a little bit lazy and playing like millionaires earlier on, and of course we know what happens when teams do that. They give the opposition a sniff, and that's exactly what we did. We gave North Melbourne a sniff, and and they just bustled and hustled and worried us and hung around. And it wasn't until we started to actually play some decent Adelaide Crows 2021 style football that we actually shook them off.
Yeah, it was. They were getting us on that run, and a couple of times we gave them the middle. Of course, I'm like, don't give them the middle. That's basic football. and that was what does worry us. A number of it was those turnovers. And so we've got to kind of fix that up. I have watched Nix's presser, and I like the fact that he doesn't sugarcoat.
No,
and
he
talks
doesn't
about
ever.
it. But he does also give a lot of the positives, which you need to do with a young group, and what they're talking about. The fact why I don't mind. Well, I hated those middle 2 quarters, but it's that last one. It's that fight that we're continually showing this year.
Well,
and
that's
we've shown
it
in
thing,
every game.
Yeah, J-Mac in the chat saying North dragged us down to their level. I'm not so sure about that. I honestly think that we just played too casually. We were going for kicks that weren't high percentage. We were second of the ball, waiting for them to make mistakes. We were slack with our hands, and we just played like a team that felt like all they had to do was turn up in order to win. You know what I mean? They just had to turn up in order to win, and it just isn't like that at this level. Even the worst team in the comp can put you to the sword if you give them a sniff, because, they're still decent players. So, and it took us a good quarter and a half to right that ship, and it didn't look good at 3/4 time at all. I had my doubts at 3/4 time whether we were going to get back. But as you said, Nick, we are starting to find a habit of being able to reconfigure and regroup and get our structures right. And once we got our structures right in the last quarter and started playing the game in our half of the ground, then we looked a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, agree. I did like a little bit of individuality, but Rob lifting. We saw a lot more of the Rob from last year in this game, and a lot of his little work. I mean, we were getting smashed in that midfield on the outside. We were getting a little bit too in close to the contest, and I think that was a bit of the makeup of that midfield a bit as well. But there were those little paddles and things like that were happening. We were trying to get that freedom to get it on the outside. The only problem is they were reading it better.
Yeah. Now, Mac, are you here? No, I dragged him in, but he's not here, so we'll just keep going until he starts talking. It was a better game.
Is that what we always do?
Yeah, it was a better game from O'Brien and a few others, but we'll go through those in a moment. First of all, though, let's have a look at some the lineups, Nick, because we had an interesting lineup this week. That's just not working for me right now. Interesting lineup this week with Fogarty in. I expected Fogarty to come in for Lynch, but as it turned out, he didn't come in for Lynch. He came in for Sloaney.
Sloan.
And that I found that interesting. I don't think it worked, to be honest with you. I really don't think it worked. But when Darcy ended up playing a bit more of a traditional role up forward, he looked all right.
So what Nick said in the presser was that there was a particular job that Fogg had to do in the midfield. And he said the stats don't show it, but from the coaching point of view and what they wanted him to do, I think his wording was he had a decent game.
I don't like non-statistical roles. Don't show it now.
So it's going to be interesting to know what that exactly was. But I think it is definitely we may not like it, but that's what Nix wants to do with him.
Look, I am not a fan of the Darcy Fogarty midfield experiment, and I think today showed every piece of evidence why he's not a midfielder. He's not a midfielder. He's not quick enough. He's not agile enough. He doesn't run defensively well enough, probably more so because of his physical limitations. He is an out-and-out forward. And I don't like that we're trying to shoehorn him in to get him in the team, when in my view, based on his output when he was playing in his suited role up forward, he offered us more than what Tom Lynch did. Tom Lynch had a good game in round one, hasn't played well since. And I just think that Darcy needs to be in Lynch's spot. I don't think he's a midfielder. I don't think he'll ever be a midfielder. And I understand what the club are trying to do with making him kind of a midfield forward hybrid type. But he is a liability in the midfield, if you ask me.
Well, we'll wait and see what we actually do with him next week.
Yeah. Lockie Murphy's
Whether
the other
he still
one.
stays in the team.
Yeah. Well, I think his output in the end up forward was good enough to stay in the team as a forward.
Definitely. And I did like the way they used him and Walker when they were on at the same time. Because you have one up high and one deep.
Yeah, they had that elastic band sort of system going where, they wouldn't be in the same spot as each other, want to be up and want to be back, etc. So that was good. They persisted with Billy Frampton. Billy took a couple of clunks early, and I thought, oh, here we go. But then proceeded to
play like
go
Frampton?
back to, yeah. The biggest problem that I have with Billy is that he's invariably behind. He plays a lot from behind. And I'd like to see him come at the ball and also wrestle for front position more in those one-on-one contests.
Yeah, I agree. That's my issue with him, and that's why I have always preferred Himmelberg, because he actually starts from in front, and that's why I got angry the other week about Tilthorpe, because Tilthorpe plays very like Frampton from behind.
Yeah. Well, he did that game. I mean, how many other games of his have you seen?
Saw him in the preseason as well, and he was also playing behind.
Come on, Nikki.
I'm only going on what I've seen so far, and that was frustrating me because I'd heard so much about him. But that's that same kind of thing. But I agree, particularly with looking at the stats from the SNFL game. Yeah, you'd think that Frampton's going to be out and Himmelberg could be back in.
Well, you'd think so. I don't know what Mac is doing. He's just sitting in there bloody commenting on the chat, and he's sitting in the voice channel, but he's not saying a bloody word, so whatever. Jake Kelly, I could tell, and I actually put it in the Discord chat, game day chat, about a minute in, that he was going to have a stinker, and he had a stinker, in my opinion. And he's another one where we know what we're going to get. It's like Lynch. We know what we're going to get from Jake Kelly. And sometimes it's okay, and a lot of the times it's pretty average. And we've got a kid sitting in the twos by the name of Worrell, and I think it's time that we got him in.
Yeah, he got mentioned this week, leading into by Nix, saying that that he's close. Yeah. So that possibly could happen.
Yeah, he needs to come in. It's time now. We're not going to get any more out of Jake, and he's going to have the odd good game. He did look a little better the other day when he was playing a little bit higher, but when he plays in those deep defensive roles, he just worries the hell out of me, and I could tell straight up that he was going to have a bad game, and he did have a bad game. Look, apart from that, I think the selections were pretty right. We had DMAC as our medical emergency. Probably not a bad option, given that he's a runner, and it was a fast deck.
And it's on Marvel.
Yeah, so probably not a bad thing. He didn't get a look in the end anyway, so it didn't matter. Nick, let's just have a look at some team stats, shall we? And I'll just go through some of the head-to-heads here. And
these are not going to be pretty.
Well, it's interesting with the head-to-heads because I'm just getting myself set up here. A lot of it was fairly even, but when you actually had a look at how the game progressed. It didn't seem like it should be that even, but if you have a look at the timelines, I'll just chuck up disposals just to get us going here. And you can see that we actually out-disposed North Melbourne for a good portion of this of the first quarter, and then we just kind of fell in a hole. We came back to them. They actually, outpossessed us for large parts of the second and third quarter. It wasn't until the last quarter that we really started to pull away.
Yeah. And I think that's a bit of fitness coming into it. Although, as has been pointed out in the chat, you saw Rowe was cramping in the third. Lynch didn't look fit, even though it was his 150th. So I think there was some little bit there. But to me, a lot of it is we actually seem to have corrected our fitness from last year for now the longer games. And particularly on Marvel, it is really that flick of the handball, fast movement, which is the best way to play that ground.
Yep. Kicks were up for us, 221 to 149. We're playing a kicking game still. North similarly had a similar kick to handball ratio, but not as much. We had more inside 50s, 59 to 53. But again, if you have a look at how they were dispersed, North Melbourne were actually up on inside 50s until about the 6th minute of the last quarter. So for the majority of the match, even though we ended up being 6 up on inside 50s, we were at times way down, like 10 to 15 down during the course of the match. For people watching on YouTube, I hope that graph is clear there. It gives you a good indication of how that tracked. So, they owned the ball for a large percentage of the time, and neither team were terribly efficient from inside 50. We were slightly more efficient, going at just under 50%, North at 43, probably reflecting just their lack of talent up forward, probably, I'd say, more than anything else.
Yeah. We did push them out wide. We did once we kind of, when they were trying to get into the forward line. So a lot of their shots were mostly further out. There were some that were out in front that they then just they forgot that the two really big sticks are what you're supposed to aim between. And so I thought our defense actually kind of worked well to do that. But definitely that run on the outside was absolutely killing us.
Yeah, it was. What else do we have here? In the stoppage department, Riley got beaten again by Mr. Goldstein, but have a look at that. Have a look at how that tracked. I don't know whether you've got YouTube up, Nick, but at times... No,
I don't.
At times, Goldstein was like 15 hit-outs up. I mean, that's a big disparity. It only really came back to close towards the end of the match.
Yeah, there was some interesting, though, particularly in those centre square hit-outs, because there were some that were very much to Goldstein's advantage and weren't called back at all. But I thought around the ground, Rob was probably that better option. They used Goldstein more up forward, and he was quite effective there and worried us a bit when they were having their comeback. But I was pleased to see Rob clunking the marks, the one he took on the goal line, and then very smartly just like, no, I'm going to kick this over the line real quick and not a set shot.
Yeah.
He knows he has some issues with that. But so whilst we weren't doing so well in that centre, I think I could see some reasons for that. A number of the times, though, he was getting some beautiful taps down, but went straight to a North player because they were actually on the move, and all of our midfielders were too in close.
Yeah. We just looked a bit light, Nick. We looked a bit light around the midfield. They have some big bodies in the midfield still, North Melbourne, and without Sloaney there, it was really left up to Rory Laird, and we just seemed to get bustled a bit.
Yep. Yeah. And I thought Lairdy's after-match interview was interesting with him being tagged. And he admitted, I didn't handle it well. And yet you'd probably put him in close to our best players.
Yeah, I liked his
doing
answer.
And working through that tag.
Yeah.
But I should have seen Key step up a little bit more, but they didn't till the last quarter.
Yeah. I like Lairdy's the way he responded to the questions about him getting tagged, because he didn't look comfortable at all. But he stuck in there, and around the grounds he was fantastic. So can't really fault him there. But if you can
we saw that last year when he was getting tagged and he didn't quite know how to cope with it, and he kind of went back in his shell.
Yeah.
And this one, he still didn't like it, and he retaliated probably in ways he shouldn't have at times. But there was the frustration, etc. But he still kept working and trying to get the ball and be proactive. And that's the way to beat the tag. And that's when they got frustrated and really started targeting him. And I think one of the best thing was when he did get that hit, we immediately took him off. Just like, no, they're doing that. We're just going to take you off for a little bit, rest, protect, then go back on. So I thought that was actually really good when they did that. And I think that helped him a bit too.
Yeah. If you have a look at the centre clearance stats, though, I mean, we got absolutely towed up for the majority of the game. Again, the disparity is quite remarkable, and we only got to parity sort of halfway through the last quarter. So they were really getting on top of us in the midfield. Around the grounds with stoppages, let's have a look. Yeah, even around the grounds with stoppages, it was more even, but through periods of the third and, sort of halfway through the last, we were getting out-bustled and they were outnumbering us. So even though stoppage clearances were even at 20 all and centre clearances were even at 12-10, it wasn't that convincing and it wasn't that close for long periods of the game. And I think you'll find as we have a look at possessions, I'll just chuck up here contested possessions here. We won that contested possessions 141 to 132, and yet again there's a disparity through the middle of the game where we just dropped off in terms of our intensity and our ability to win contested ball.
And that's what I was yelling at so much about it, because you could just see those setups happening where they had that outer ring, and it was frustrating.
Now something's gone wrong with my camera, so you're not going to see me much anymore. But that's okay. No one really wants to anyway. If we have a look at uncontested possession, where are we? So again, even though we ended up winning uncontested possession 227 to 188, towards the beginning of the last quarter, it was pretty much even. And we only really drew away in uncontested possession as we took control of the game in the last quarter. So that's where these end of game stats can be quite misleading, because they don't tell you the game. That's why I like getting the stats tracker up, because it shows you what's happening during the course of the game, and you can generally track the scoreline to what's happening with some key stats. And we've certainly seen that here, where most of the stats have only really gotten even as we've come towards the end of the game. Our marks, surprisingly, we were pretty much up on that, 105 to 76. So that surprises me, because Kangaroos had a similar kick to handball ratio than we did, but we seem to take more marks. So I'm not sure.
And there were some good contested marks in there too.
Yeah, well, our marks inside 50, we were miles on top, which probably reflects the way Kangaroos were scoring. They didn't take a lot of marks inside 50. Contested marks, again, 19 to 8 was the final margin, and yet halfway through the third quarter it was even. So we took, what did we take? From the 10-minute mark of the third quarter, what's that, 8? We took 11 contested marks and they took 1. So we really got on top in the air. But, there was a couple of things that I really noticed. One was that we were getting bogged down across half-back, so we had no run coming out of half-back. And the amount of times we kicked the ball down the line instead of our little diagonals, they really did deny us the corridor, and they made us go down the line. And the second thing that correlates with that is the amount of times we kicked to contests instead of kicking to lead-ups. And we were fortunate, I think, in some respects, that we were able to get on top in the contesting marking stakes, because had we not done so, and there'd be a lot more 50-50 ball, we may not have got the result, because that stat there shows me that we were fortunate to win a lot of one-on-one or contested contests aerially.
And we did have some nice lead-ups at time, but our kicking to our forwards was poor.
Yeah. Well, the amount of times we tried cute kicks over a North Melbourne player, a little weighted kick, and the amount of times they got cut off, it was just millionaire footy. In terms of our defence, our tackles, it was a pretty intense game, so tackling was pretty good. It was, again, though, North Melbourne tracked through that second and third quarter. They tracked a lot higher than us in tackles. So even though we ended up winning the tackle count by a couple, at some stages there they were 10 to 12 tackles up at some stages during that period in that second and third quarter. So again, a misleading stat in the end. Same with tackles inside 50. I don't know whether the people that are actually watching on YouTube, that's an amazing stat. Have a look at that. Tackles inside 50. We were even at the 18-minute mark of the first quarter, and then at the start of the third quarter, we were 10 tackles down? Tackles inside 50. North Melbourne only. Sorry, go on.
What was our missed tackles? Because the number of missed tackles.
Wow, they don't take
that was another frustrating aspect of we just reaching too far. We weren't making sure, or they were just breaking it too easily.
Yeah, the Kangaroos did not lay a tackle inside 50 in the second half, and we upped our intensity. We only had 2 tackles in the inside 50 in the first half, and I think that's reflective of the fact that we had Lynch, Walker, Fogarty, and Frampton up there, and also McAdam, who isn't really. He's got to work on his defensive game. So we were very, very top heavy, and they were able to waltz the ball out. It really, and this is where I'm getting at with regards to Fogarty. I'm happy that he was in the game. I'm happy that he got selected. But having Tex, Lynch, and Fog in the same forward line makes us a very slow forward line defensively. And it's a real concern.
Yeah, to me, Lynch is the one that's a liability at the moment because he's just not performing.
I agree. Now, just while I go and get a cable, Nick, to try and get my camera going, do you want to talk to Ray? I'm going to bring Razor Ray all the way from the United States. Where are you, Ray? Let me move you down. Hang on a sec. Hope you're ready, mate, because you're on. Ray, how you going?
Going good tonight, guys. How y'all?
Oh, you're a bit quiet, mate. Can you get closer to whatever you're speaking into?
Yeah, how's that?
Yeah, that's much better.
Better. How y'all doing tonight?
Pretty good. Now, Nick, have a conversation while I go and get a cable. I'll be back in a minute.
So, I mean, you've got one of the good names there with Razor Ray, but how on earth did you end up following the Crows?
Well, long story short, I used to live over there doing work for the family, and then hooked up with an Adelaide girl, and I always liked footy, and her team was the Crows, and so they became my team.
Well, that's very good. So did you manage to catch the game today?
Oh yeah. I boiled the game today down to the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So I'm suggesting the ugly is the largest part.
Well, the ugly would be Billy Frampton, because he had another horrible game. He had a horrible game last week. I think we discussed it last week about he really needs to sit out a bit. So that was the ugly.
Yeah, and you would know listening to us that I'm quite a big fan of Himmelberg, and I think we were just kind of waiting for him to get some form in the SNFL.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think he'll do better. He just season him up a bit.
And definitely, I'm watching him against South Adelaide last week in the SNFL. His ruck work has also improved incredibly, so he can do a lot more pinch hitting for Rob.
Yeah, agreed. And it'll free Rob up a little bit, break him, give him a break during the game.
I think he likes to shoot a lot, but because we've literally got him and Strawn, and sorry, Strawny, but no, we do kind of need to keep Rob in the game as much as possible.
Yes, agreed.
Bit him firing.
Now, it says a lot about technology that we can't get a bloke from, I don't know, wherever Macca lives, down at the bay or something in, but we can get a bloke from, where are you, Ray? You're in Texas, mate.
No, I'm in northern Nevada.
Ah, northern Nevada. Yeah, fair enough. And what's the experience like watching Aussie Rules football in America? I don't suppose you have any mates coming over, having a beer and watching the game, do you?
They don't watch it. I have invited a few over, and they're frustrated by the officiating.
So wait.
Well, they're screaming at the TV also. That's a tackle. That's ball. So it's they don't really understand it. They don't follow it. So that's probably why I like the CrowCast, because I get to talk about the game with other people that follow the game. So it's nice.
It is good like that.
It is good to have you on board, mate.
And PJ Crows wants to know, how do you actually watch games when you're being based in the US? Because aren't they on a couple of channels?
Well, they use Fox Sports usually would show one game a week, maybe two. But I've been watching it on the Watch AFL app, global app. So it's worked out fine for me. And it's I catch a few games during the weekend, and then I watch the rest during the week. So it's nice. I like it. Good setup.
It's good. It's good that actually happens, because when I used to live in the UK, the AFL only offered you a radio call, so that was interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's enjoyable to watch it, because I've done the radio thing, and that's hard.
Yeah, particularly like when you have to wake up early in the morning.
Well, I do have to adjust my schedule, because on the weekend I'm just blown out, because it's going on 4 a.m. here. But
No.
it's a sacrifice to at least enjoy it with other people that enjoy the game. I don't have that here, because nobody knows what Aussie Rules is, or because we call it Aussie Rules,
which is what it's supposed to be called.
Yeah, so I've always thought it was just footy. So
yeah, that too. So, and Mac has pointed out, we've got your ugly. So what was your good and your bad?
The good. I thought Keith, Tex, Rob, Scholl had a great game. Smithers, they were good.
What about the bad?
The bad. Rowe was bad. He just had a horrible game.
He did.
Bad. The midfield, the kicking. The team not able to lift when they're under pressure sometimes. I think they panic. They don't
Yeah.
think it through.
And I think that's the case you're going to get with a bit of the young team, because even though we do still have some of those old heads, it's still predominantly quite a young, inexperienced team.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. Well, the reason I really wanted to call in is because a couple years ago we used to have a laugh about people calling in and it never worked out, or it just became hilarious. So
they all said they wanted it, and then we'd offer it, and everybody would go silent.
That's right.
Like chickens. The lot of you, chickens.
Yeah. And I wanted to call in and just put my thoughts on Fogg out there. I think he's really gotten a bum deal from the Crows, because I agree with Rob that he's not a midfielder. He's a forward. And they keep trying to make a dual player out of him, not play a strong forward. And I think that's difficult for him. And the team has failed to recognize that. So and people bagging on him and not giving him a chance, I think is totally unfair, because I don't think it's on his part. It's the club forcing him or making him play these different roles. And he's a one-track kid, so they need to recognize him and just play him as a forward.
100%
bagging
right.
on him all the time is unfair.
100% right. I'm just going to have to ask you to keep talking right into that microphone, because you're fading in and out a little bit. While we got you here, mate, let's just continue on with some of these head-to-head stats. The other thing, score involvements here. And you're also feeding back through your headset. Again, they had a lot more chains running at various stages through the game, and they looked to be using each other a lot more. As I was saying before, we tended to kick up and down the line, and it just wasn't very efficient football. I think that's probably the tail of the tape, Nick.
Yeah, and definitely it was. It was, our issues were our midfield. Our issues were, apart from the first 10 minutes in the last quarter, kicking into the forward line. But I actually thought our wings weren't bad. I thought Seed and Shoal had a decent game for both of them. And the one other one, I hate to say it, but I thought Geordie Butts had a bit of a mare as well.
I
it had to come at some
Butts'
stage.
game.
Oh, it was okay overall, but there were those first couple of mistakes at the start, and I thought, oh, this isn't going to go well for him. He got away with a few things. He got a few things played against him. Goldstein's mark that bounced off his face was and you, and not you, Razor Ray, but the other Razor Ray, who was right in front of him, and he missed that. But yeah, I think he covered off pretty much. Those stats showed exactly what the tale of the game was and why it was so frustrating to watch. Probably not only as a Crow supporter, but as a North Melbourne supporter.
All right. Well, in that case, let's have a look at some individual stats, because we've got it up here on the screen. And the first one that I really wanted to have a look at is Lachie Shoal, because I just thought he had a fantastic game.
Indeed.
So 31 disposals, 25 kicks, 6 handballs, 8 marks, 2 tackles, a kick, 1 goal, 2. Fantastic. And I've managed to get up the Telstra tracker here, and you can just see where he was getting his ball. He spent a lot of time in defence, but in the last quarter, when he got forward a couple of times, he was very damaging. And kicked that goal towards the end there that was almost a sealer, really. So it was an excellent game. Just having a look at his stats there, you could see he was quite prolific in the first quarter. He had 7 disposals in the first quarter. But he was one of the few that kept working hard in the second and third quarters when others were falling away. So you can see there that the stat line, the trend line, is fairly consistent for him with disposals. In terms of his score involvements, which I always like to have a look at, he got very busy in the last quarter. Have a look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 score involvements in the last quarter. So you could say that Lockie Scholl was instrumental in getting us back into the game. Yes, Liquid, Crow, we've got heat maps now. It's all happening. It's all happening.
I think on paper, Scholl had the best game, so for the stats.
I reckon you're right. His meters gained. Let's have a look at his meters gained. So nearly 600 meters gained for the match is not a bad effort. His disposal efficiency at 81%, 9 contested possessions, 22 uncontested possessions, 6 intercepts, 1 goal assist, 8 score involvements, 14 pressure acts. Spent almost the entire game on the ground, 120 minutes out of 126. Just an all-round really good effort from Lockie.
Yeah, I thought he's been down a little bit quiet the past 2 weeks, so it was really nice to see him have another of those quite dominant games on the wing that we know he can do. And just that ability, that disposal he has by either foot, it's just magnificent. And I think, as PJ Crow said, he polished a lot of turds today.
He certainly did.
Yeah, and very much it was that last quarter, him, and you look at the players who really lifted it in that last quarter. It was him, it was Schoenberg, it was Duday. These are young players, so it is boding well for our future.
Yep, 100% agree. Tommy Duday, actually, for mine, was a bit of an unsung hero, particularly in the last, and we'll get to him in a moment. Yeah. Let's have a look at Lairdy. I thought Rory's game was pretty damn good, considering he did struggle with a tag there during periods of the game, but I thought he was excellent. 31 disposals, 12 kicks, 19 handballs. Again, all around the ground, but very, very busy in the centre of the ground, as you can see there from the Telstra tracker. But you can see how his disposals tracked. It was a bit quiet through periods of the second and the third quarter, but either side of that, certainly in the first quarter and in the last, he was very, very busy.
And very much so, those intercept marks were when they were trying to get that run on. I mean, they were just absolutely massive contested marks he was taking. And, to have that level of the captaincy on you at that age, under fire, doing it from defence, and then being quite integral in those repeat entries back into our forward 50, because not only is he a great intercept marker, he's got a really nice disposal on him as well.
Yep.
Which was why I was very happy when we had that whole lever discussion, that I kept telling everybody, don't worry, we've got somebody cheaper who's better.
Now, Ray,
it's just so nice to see that it's coming through.
Ray, I'm going to give you a chance for your final thoughts, and then I'm going to kick you out because you're feeding back. Give us your final thoughts, mate.
Yeah, no, great. Hey, thanks for allowing me to call in. It was great.
Right.
It was fun.
And you can stick it up everyone else that's in the chat. Thanks, Ray.
Hey, thank you guys.
Have a great time, Ray. It's good to hear you in here.
You too, Nick.
And that was Razor Ray. So I just want to make a note, Nick, that for the patrons that are listening or watching, you do have automatic access on Discord to the voice channels in the CrowCast server, and you also get the opportunity to come on the show. So I don't think we've had anyone apart from Ray on. Maybe PJ last year, PJ Crows, but don't be shy. Get around it. All right, now back to Lairdy. His contested work was pretty good. 18 contested possessions, 14 uncontested possessions. I just want to have a look quickly at his stoppage work. His centre clearances. Sorry, wrong guy. Ray Lairdy. Yeah, so He only had 2 centre clearances for the game. I actually am surprised by that. I thought he had more. Let's have a look. Yeah, 2 centre clearances and 9 stoppage clearances. So I don't know whether he didn't get credit for some of those, but I thought he was a bit busier in the middle. But maybe that's a indication of the tagging role that was getting played on him in the middle.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. And that was one of the other things that Nick said was that he sacrificed a bit of his game in that last quarter to enable us to actually lift a little bit in the midfield. And for somebody, who's still learning his way as a midfielder, we kind of forget he's only been doing this for a year, really.
He's not bloody learning. How long do you want him to play in the midfield before he stops learning, Nick?
You never stop learning in life. You never stop learning in life.
Oh, God.
But going from that running halfback flanker to an inside midfielder in a way, and literally he had to carry the midfield today. And he hasn't really had to do that so much any before. So I was really impressed with his game overall. And I agree with you that I think that some of those stats, I think they missed some. And Janamai said, 9 stoppage clearance is very good, particularly when we were getting smashed.
Well, that's right. Exactly right. I mean, his contested work was elite. He had 18 contested possessions, predominantly in the first half. And 14 uncontested possessions, but he was just a really good foil for the rest of the midfield. Benny Keys, I'll just have a look quickly at Ben. I thought Benny Keys was a little bit down today.
Yeah,
it's probably the least output I've seen from Ben Keys for a while. What would you say?
Agree. I was expecting him, particularly when Letty was being tagged. That he should have lifted, and we didn't quite get that from him.
Yeah, it was quite surprising, actually. Where is he? Hey, Ben. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, yeah, he had 20. I mean, he had 25 disposals, and he was quite busy. But I don't think he had the same impact on the game as what we used to. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Sorry. It was just
He's not even on the bloody thing. All right. His contested ball work was probably pretty good still. 12 contested possessions. What's that? 2, 4, 6 in the second half, 6 in the first. But he was down in score involvements until the last quarter. You can see he had basically no impact on the scoreboard in the first half in terms of score involvements. And then he had 4 score involvements in the last quarter and 1 in the third. So he was one that lifted along with Scholl and a couple of others, I think, after 3/4 time.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of who else that really did lift, and there wasn't a lot. Because to me, even though Rob was getting beaten, to me he was fairly consistent over all 4.
I actually thought Brody Smith played a pretty good game.
Yeah, particularly when we were getting challenged and we were losing a bit of that run. He really tried. There were a couple of those. I did see him when he got his knee looked at, but he came back on and seemed quite fine. I want to know who the hell was on Stevenson, because it didn't look like we had anybody on him.
Well, Brody Smith, he had 22 disposals, 19 kicks, 3 handballs, 7 marks, 3 tackles. Covered very much his 2 roles. It's very obvious. He's the deliverer out of defence, and he's the deliverer into forward 50. You can see where all his disposals are just about is on that defensive 50 line and just forward of centre on the half forward line there. So that's what what we've been talking about players playing their roles. 82% disposal efficiency, which is really good for Brodie because he can spray them a little bit at times. 5 score involvements. I would hazard a guess if we just have a look. 2 in the first and 2 in the last there. So. Where's his intercept?
He had to
possessions?
go. He was playing a bit deeper in that second and third because we were getting those repeat into the defence.
Yeah. Intercepts is what I wanted to have a look at with him because he had 9 for the match, which is pretty good. Particularly in that towards the end of the second quarter there where they were really getting a bit of a wriggle on, he was able to be a bit of a rock and try to limit that. He had 6 inside 50s, 7 rebound 50s. 2 1%ers. I thought it was a pretty good game from Brodie.
Yeah, he was in one of my 5.
Yeah, and as mentioned in the chat there, over 700 metres gained, which is pretty amazing.
Not too shabby.
747. So that's pretty good. Seedsman, I thought, was another one that played pretty well. Also had over 550 metres gained for Paul Seedsman. I thought was a pretty good effort from him. It's just when Paul Seedsman turns up, he's... Yeah.
He was one of the few four-quarter players we had.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Nick. When Seedsman turns up, he's very serviceable. He had 25 disposals, 17 kicks, 8 handballs, 4 marks, 4 tackles, kick 1 goal, 1. You can see there predominantly through the wing and defensively. So, he did a lot of grunt work. I'd love to see his contested possessions. 5 contested possessions, 21 uncontested possessions. So, again, he's another guy that just... He's a deliverer into our forward 50. I'd like to see what his score involvements were. So again in that last quarter, he's had 4 score involvements, 7 for the match, which is pretty good. I actually thought he was also a bit instrumental. 611 metres gained, as I mentioned before. He was also a bit instrumental in our last quarter fight back, if you ask me.
And we haven't kind of mentioned in the last 2. Oh, we did again the Sydney game. We mentioned him there, but I actually thought he was also fairly consistent last week as well. So that's like 3 games in a row. We've had a really nice consistency from Seeds, and so others have talked about in the chat. He's normally a bit up and down, or he's a bit walkabout. But to me, we've seen that consistency from him this year, which is quite pleasing. Which means, just being that more actively involved in the game.
Yeah. Now, we've already talked about Lockie Scholl. Let's have a talk about another young gun, Mr. Schoenberg, who I thought
I was going to say your favourite.
I just thought he had quite a consistent game today. He had 20 disposals, 15 kicks and 5 handballs. Went missing a little bit in the third quarter, but was again quite instrumental in the last.
Now, was he playing more forward? Because I didn't see him in the midfield a lot.
He didn't play a lot of midfield minutes. I saw actually Lockie Murphy play a bit of do a bit of work around the midfield at times. Yeah. I didn't see a lot of Harry. Didn't see a lot of Sam Berry either, to be honest with you. You can see Harry's work was predominantly on the wings forward of the forward 50, so he was kind of hitting up a bit. 60% time spent in the forward half, but only got 2 possessions in the centre square, so you couldn't say that he was any real threat in there. Kicked 2 goals though in that last quarter, which was good. 9 score involvements as well, and I bet you most of those were in the last quarter too. Yeah, so he's had 5 score involvements out of his 9 in the last quarter. So it really
and just that.
Go on.
I was just going to say that the first of his goals in that last quarter, I love the shot from behind the goal of when he's running and Walker does that little tap down, and the way that he actually runs, and he's still running, but he slows the run on the little arc. just so he can then, once he gets that hit, to then accelerate away. So he wasn't going to be too far in front. He was that perfect distance. And it's that innate ability that he has. And his second goal, just those little steps just to create that space. I mean, I know Macca and you have raised it quite a lot, is his ability to just make something happen, but just to make everybody else around him move in slow motion and to move away from him.
Yeah, it's composure. It's composure. And what you described about him steadying himself.
Underrated.
Yeah, him being able to steady himself and just take one or two steps is really key to him being able to use the ball as efficiently as he does. I mean, let's have a look at his his effective disposals, or his disposal efficiency, I should say. Up around the 90%. What's that? No, what did he finish up with? Yeah, 90% disposal efficiency from 20 possessions. That's elite in terms of disposal efficiency.
Very much so.
The noticeable thing about that is that his disposal efficiency actually increased as the game wore on. He was down around the 50% in the first quarter. So that shows me that he was running on top of the ground in the last quarter, and he used the ball particularly well. So I liked Harry's game.
And that's what he's been working on, was getting his aerobic capacity up so he could play more midfield. And
I'm telling you right now, Nick, once he can run a game out in the midfield, he's a Brownlow medalist.
Definitely.
He's absolute silk.
And a 300-game player. Touch wood.
Yep, touch wood. Tommy Doty's probably the last one that I want to have a look at. The stats probably won't tell a huge story, but Tommy, I thought, as I mentioned earlier, was just a bit of a rock for us down back, particularly in that last quarter. The one that I'll have a look at is his intercepts, because I'm sure in the last quarter that'll kick up. Yeah, so he had 4 intercept possessions in the last quarter, and I probably remember all of them. Just on that, backward of half forward there, just standing in the way when we were able to get repeat inside 50s.
Yeah, just right by the interchange gates. That was his spot. You kick it to there, he's going to mark it.
Yep, and you can see from his hotspot tracker there, he played quite deep for most of the game. But when we were able to push up and get some field position, finally, he was able to get those possessions a little bit further up. Had 18 disposals, 11 kicks, 7 handballs, 9 marks. I reckon those marks might have been, 3 in the last quarter. And I reckon they're probably all contested too. Let's have a look. 2 of them were contested. Yep. So 9 contested possessions, 8 uncontested possessions, 11 intercept possessions, as we just spoke about before. His score involvements is interesting for a guy who's played so deep. His score involvements 6, including 3 in the last quarter. So it just shows that he does something with it. He uses the ball very well when he's got hold of it. 5 contested marks, 377 metres gained. I thought probably Tommy's best game for the season so far.
Agree. And even though he did have some issues 1-on-1, but he's like up against Goldstein. So they did really try to mismatch our defence. And I thought the way that he controlled the defence, and he would actually, you could see him actively, telling Butts, go, no, you on them, I will take this player. And things like that. So the on-field leadership, which we kind of known about, but it was just so nice to see that little step forward. And he is very much a captain in the making.
100%. You can tell that he's fully invested in what's going on, and he just needs 50 games under his belt, that lad. Now, a couple... Will Hamill, I thought, had an interesting game. I'm actually a little bit worried about his ability to rebound from head knocks at this stage, because he copped another one that looked a little nasty.
He got cleared, though. So I was very surprised to see him back on the ground, because I know we're very... not concerned, but we very aware of what he has, particularly those concussions from last year. I know another one that also has issues with concussions because of the delayed symptoms is actually DMAC. And so the club was often very conservative about it. So the fact that he came back on, and he actually didn't play too badly when he came back on. So that was, to me, that was okay. And it was good that we took him off. But he didn't, he was struggling early on, I think, with a little bit of the matchup. And that's something he's got to work through because he's a very good defender.
Yeah, well, he had 7 positives during that lean period in the second and third quarters. Finished off the game with 3 after 2 in the first. So you're right, Nick. And there was obviously that period of time where he was off the ground getting assessed as well. So, you know, a lot of work in the back half, a little bit going forward towards the end. 5 contested possessions, 10 uncontested possessions, only turned it over twice, 5 intercepts. We got there 4 marks, 8 pressure acts, gained 200 metres. So, you know, I mean, Will Hamill's a work in progress. I'd like to see him put on a bit of beef. He obviously needs, I think, he's so slight that he needs to put on a bit of muscle around the neck and shoulders to kind of help him stabilise his head a bit, because like the one that he got, the one that put him down today was fairly innocuous.
Yeah, and that's what can kind of happen, because I've had one of those before, where it's more the whiplash that gets you.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's what a strong neck will help you with, that whiplash. That's why the Grand Prix drivers go through all that neck training.
But I like what they're doing with him to teach him how to be more defender, because he's not bad at it. But that AFL, that step up from the SANFL to the AFL is quite a bit more. And then you can see that he's very much the like-for-like replacement with Brodie.
Oh, 100%. He's Brodie's understudy, there's no doubt about it. And you can imagine in the future him, Wayne Miller and Lockie Scholl, although I think Lockie will play further up. But Worrell and those types running off halfback would be excellent. So I don't think it was a bad game from Will, and I hope he's all right with his head. Now, players in trouble. Let's start with Tommy Lynch, because I know the club loves him and he's a leader and all the rest of it. Macca. I just heard Macca.
It was a small cameo, and then he ran away.
Is he gone again?
I have no idea.
Macca, we missed you.
Macca, we can hear you, so do you need me to mute you?
I think possibly.
I'm going to have to mute him, because otherwise he's going to make a fool of himself. Oh, shit. That's pretty funny. Where are you, Mac? I'm just going to mute you, mate. There you go. Right.
Lynchy.
Yeah, Lynch. So he had 17 touches. From your lead up forward, that's kind of what you want. What are we whinging about, Nick?
Yeah, but what was his efficiency regarding those 17 touches?
His disposal efficiency was started off quite high. The first half he was up around 100%, but ended at about 77 or 78% disposal efficiency. 71.
Yeah, I thought a lot of his disposals were poo.
Well, second half he was shocking. Second half he had a bit of a mare. If you have a look at his effective disposals in the first half compared to the second half, he only had 4 effective disposals in the second half and 8 in the first half. So out of his 17 disposals, he had 8 effective in the first half, 4 in the second half, and the rest were ineffective.
And I think a lot of those stats were actually generous.
Well, the other thing I look at with Lynch is his score involvements, because that's his role. He is the link man, and he should be getting involved in chains. And he only had four score involvements today, and critically, wasn't really involved in the last quarter. Had 2 score involvements in the first quarter, one just after half time, and one at the beginning of the last quarter. That was it. Considering that's probably I would say his number one KPI. He didn't hit the scoreboard himself, and he only had those few score involvements. So, yeah, a little bit disappointing from Tommy. Only 4 contested possessions, turned it over 4 times. I don't know how that correlates, but anyway. Took 5 marks, only 1 contested, only 5 pressure acts. Spent... what's that? Spent a fair bit of time off the ground, so 94 minutes out of a total of 126. What's that? It's about 60-something percent, 70%, I guess. 285 metres gained. Not much else going on there with Tommy.
No.
I don't know.
And
I know they love
looked
him.
at the stats for Benny Davis's game. He kicked 2-3, had 13 possessions. I think he had more than that. So I wonder whether there's going to be a swap happening there.
Yeah, I don't think it's Davis. I think it needs to be Fogarty going into that role, Neki.
And bring in another smaller?
Yeah. I see Ben Davis as almost Shane McAdam.
He
Flashy.
plays more of the Lynch role, though, in the SANFL.
Yeah, I know he does in the SANFL, but in the limited opportunities that we've seen him in the AFL, we haven't seen it. I'm quite happy to give Ben a run, because I've always liked him. And I think he's been a bit stiff. I worry about the makeup of the forward line. The other one that I want to talk about just now is the good boy, Mr. Rowe, who had an absolute stinker.
Yes, and you said it after the Sydney game. And I think it's absolutely spot on. He needs to learn how to play away from Adelaide.
Yeah, he had an absolute stinker, Nick. Did nothing. I mean, he worked hard to get his 9 disposals, because he had about 5 of them in the last quarter. 6 kicks, 3 handballs, ended up kicking 1 goal, 1. But the big stat for me, for Jimmy Rowe, and the thing that hurt us a lot today against North Melbourne, considering the makeup of our forward line, is tackles inside 50.
Yep.
Of which there was only 2. Now, James Rowe, the ball spent a fair amount of time in our forward 50. Rowe needs to get more physical defensively, because at the moment he's a liability. And he's a liability to that if we're going to continue to play the forward structure that we have at the moment, we can't afford it.
No. And it was interesting watching between him, McHenry, and Murphy. So you saw Murphy get a bit of run in the midfield. McHenry, yes, he gave away some stupid frees and everything else, but he was involved all 4 quarters. Rowe we only really saw until the last quarter. And that's
100%.
not. We need that consistency.
If you have a look at his score involvements, he had 1 score involvement to the last quarter, and then he had 3 in the last quarter. What we didn't see a lot of is him getting up the ground. I'm a fan. I really am. I don't think he's fit enough. And I think that was my impression when we brought him in, that he wasn't going to be fit enough. And I still think that might be the case. Mac, are you there?
I reckon Fiend's muted me. Muted me.
Mac, are
No,
you
we
there?
can hear you.
Have I finally got this fucker to work?
What's your language? Yes, you have.
I've
There
only
goes-
been for the last hour and a bit.
Well, that's not my fault, mate.
Well done, Macca. We're talking about Rowe.
Rowie, yeah, didn't he have a shitter first half? I mean, he had one kick, one mark, one tackle for a whole half of a game, and he made a slight amends in the second half, but gee, his first half was terrible. I kept asking the other people who were watching the game with me, is he on the oval?
Yeah, he was almost unsighted. I'm a big G for him, Mac, but I think he's unfit, and I think at this stage, of the three, Ned McHenry, Lockie Murphy, and Jimmy Rowe, I think he's the one that maybe needs a spell, and I think he needs to do a lot more work in the gym, aerobically.
Yeah, well, nobody can argue with that because he doesn't look the greatest, fittest bloke in the world. But I think I would still continue playing him, Pete. I think the biggest problem I thought with our forward line today is that we tried to make a midfielder of a non-midfielder and then stuck him in the forward line. And at times, I don't know if you noticed, our forward line was just too tall again.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is, Macca, that we talked about that about 20 minutes ago. And I know you've got a lot of pent-up frustration, but I'm not going to reconfigure the whole freaking cast just to get your thoughts. So here we go. But here we go. I know a lot of people are interested in your thoughts, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes, or not 5, maybe 2, to just give us your broad brush overview of what you thought about the game. Go.
Well, firstly, I thought that we started off in good fashion, and that only lasted about 10 minutes or so, and then we started to get just a little bit sloppy, I thought. We actually then gave them the opportunity to feel like they were in the game, and once they felt like they were in the game, obviously they lift their spirits, they try harder, they start to use the ball better, and then, for somebody who'd backed the Crows 1-40, I was thinking, well, get $25 and just flush it down the loo because it's gone. We're just playing terrible footy.
Correct.
Footy. And it was at three-quarter time. I made the great statement, we're going to lose. We're going to lose because we're just not playing well enough. But I don't know what was the magic switch button. I just have no idea because of the fact that everything we did wrong for 2.5 quarters, all of a sudden we started doing right. And you could see also we altered our structure when they had the ball in our forward line. We made it almost impossible to get the ball out, whereas that wasn't the case earlier. And I don't know. Couldn't analyse it enough to work it out. But when they did change that structure, and it prevented North Melbourne, from clearing the ball. And as a result of that, Duday in particular had a field day picking it off. Young Schoenberger, he was outstanding in the last quarter. Even Rowie got a couple of kicks there in the last quarter. And all of a sudden, we lifted our game and went back to our good game. And but it wasn't there for about 2.5 quarters. And I'm not going to repeat everything more than that because I'm sure you've gone right into all the detail. But as a synopsis, that's what I would say. And I'd say that, and I can't believe I actually collected on 1-over-40.
Yeah.
That in itself was ridiculous.
I know. It didn't feel like a 41-point game, did it, mate?
Yeah.
You were wrong. We were right. But you were right for 2 quarters.
So, I think I have been hearing on and off what you guys have been saying. I think you've summarised it very well. I'm not so sure... Razor Ray, I'll kick you up the arse, mate, even though you're in America. You don't take a breath, you'll pass out, mate.
Well, he managed to get on the bloody thing. You didn't.
But I do agree with Liquid Crow. It was the worst 41-point whatever. And I would like to think that we could play the type of football we played in the last quarter right from the beginning of the game and just try and I know we're a young side and it's not going to happen all the time, but the idea is to now with the worst best team in the AFL. No, just to try and I don't know what, as I said, I don't know really how they changed our structure, but the structure was perfect in the last quarter. That's haven't got much more to add than that, other than to say that there were two outstanding players, Lairdy, who won, I think it was 15 contested possessions, and he had his 31, it might have even been more, and young Scholl, he is becoming an outstanding footballer.
Well, Mac, you should feel grateful that you haven't missed anything that we've already said. So we're in agreement.
Yep. Actually, even Nicky there for a couple of times. God.
Yeah, I know.
Watch it, Macca.
All right. Well, look,
I have been bloody watching. That's a trouble, Nick.
Look, we haven't really got much more to say about it, really. Who have we got next week? We've got
Freo
at home.
12:40.
That's right. So, Mac,
one comment I was going to say then, Fee, just in moving on to the next game, would you or would you not play Fogarty in the next game?
Oh, 100% I'd play him. I'd be dropping Lynch, and I'd also be dropping Frampton for Himmelberg. We were saying earlier, Mac, that one of the problems that we were having is that we were terribly slow defensively in our forward 50, and I think having Lynch, Fogg, Tex and McAdam there and Frampton just made us too slow, and of those, Lynch should be the one that I'd be dropping. I was actually just surprised that he played, to be honest.
Does Haitley get a game? He had 26 disposals in the sample.
Look, maybe Haitley gets a game, but I don't think he's necessarily an answer for our forward line at this stage.
My issue with Haitley is that he still takes too long to make decisions. He's almost another Kelly.
Oh, Kelly's brain.
No, Mako. Sorry, you missed your opportunity. All right, look, so Freo next week, and obviously they had a sort of a decent win against Hawthorn today, but that should be a very interesting encounter. Now, Nikki, one of the reasons you didn't know anything about Saturday afternoon's games is because of this particular result. Adelaide 5-3-33, Melbourne 1-9-15, a margin there of who cares because we're in a grand final.
Woo!
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my God, the wind was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. It was like Melbourne brought Casey Field's wind with them, but it didn't help them.
Nobody wants that.
Great gutsy win by the girls. It was difficult with that wind. It didn't show up on if you're watching it on TV or anything else, but you're very much right, Fiend, that Clarkey has just been adjusting things to find out what went on. Unfortunately, it looks like Chelsea Randall might be out for the grand final because
it's a terrible loss.
Yep,
terrible loss.
The concussion rule. Liquid Crow said Rochelle Martin, awesome, is absolutely spot on. God, I love her. Karen Paxman absolutely towed us up last time, and she is an outstanding player. And what I noticed was that we didn't put a tag on her, except when it was stoppages around the ground. Martin was very near her, and anytime she tried to do anything, she was just being grabbed by Martin. And when you get tackled by Martin, you stay tackled. Ebony Marinoff equaled Hatchard's disposal record of 35 disposals. She was absolutely best on ground. And I just really like that makeup of our forward line, because even though Erin's literally on one leg, they still have to put a very good player on her, because even on one leg, she can still be quite damaging, and it just frees up the other players. And the fact we've got grand final back at Adelaide Oval, if you can get there, do it, because those girls deserve a crowd to yell and cheer them on as much as possible.
Oh, they'll get a crowd. They'll get a crowd.
It's a replay of the very first one up against Brisbane.
That's right. It'll be a good game, I think.
Hatchard and Marinoff, they're just hitting their straps so nicely.
They were outstanding. Absolutely outstanding, those two.
Yeah. Chloe Shear as well
and also
really impressed me up forward.
I like the way he uses Caitlin Gould and Ree Metcalf in the ruck. That they, they're two different rucks. And so they actually, depending on what's happening and who the opposition is, he'll mix and match as to who starts and where they play. And I thought Metcalf, who's been a little bit down, she really picked up her game on the weekend, and the way that they reacted. And that's the first time I've seen them sing that song with that much gusto this season. Yeah. It just felt so much to them. And, the fact that there's very limited players in the All-Australian team from our team. We're just such an even team, which I think has boded well. And that's why we dominate.
Seriously, what's that all about?
It's ridiculous because they don't rate us so much. I did love the commentary kept reminding over and over again that Sarah Allen is an All-Australian defender, and she is quite simply one of the best key defenders they have in the league, but we use her to free her up as well. But that tackle she made in the last quarter, last quarter or third quarter, and then got the holding the ball. I mean, she's not the quickest player, but she's just smart. You can just tell that she's coached by Peter Caven. She just plays so much like him. She's such a clever footballer. And I did love that most of our defenders in the AFL team named her as their favourite player, which was quite funny. And yep, so Dylan Allen is spot on. The AFL wanted Collingwood versus Melbourne at the MCG. The umpiring was interesting. They were not consistent. And so they were allowed to tackle, but we weren't. That's what we figured out part of the way through the game.
Never mind.
But, they've now got us up against Brisbane. Hopefully we'll get a decent umpiring effort. And it should be a really good game, but I think very much we can counter Brisbane. We stifle them very well. And the last time we played them, we did the same thing. It was a very hot and muggy game. And we lost Randall in that game as well. So
yeah,
everybody's going, without Randall. But we didn't kind of play her down back for the first couple of weeks, and we were doing fine there. We put Stevie Lee Thompson back. We put Denny Van Hagen back, who's quite good as well, even though, she's great on the wing too. So fingers crossed. I think this is going to be a very nice result again, and we'll just keep up a little system we have that if it's an odd numbered year, Crows win the grand final.
Well, it's Saturday, 1:30 prime time, Adelaide Oval.
Yep.
I think it's 40,000 people have been asking in the chat. I think our max is now 40,000 in South Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it is.
We'd really want to fill that up.
They did it from, so you only had the crowd on one side, but that's the camera side. So yep. So they'll probably do that similar thing again. And also I'd like to say thank you to the Adelaide Football Club who've been paying for all of our tickets this year, including the finals, because we're members, the AFLW members. So if you do want a free ticket to the grand final, $21 on the website, but it has to be before 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Fantastic. All right. Now, I reckon that's just about the end of it. Macca?
Oh, I'm worn out, mate. Absolutely worn out.
You're only here for 5 minutes.
No, we're trying to fix this damn thing.
Look, thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the chat tonight. Thanks to those watching our live stream on YouTube. We're growing our numbers there, so give us a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It helps get us in front of more people on YouTube. Thanks also to those watching on Twitch. Thanks to Razor Ray for joining us all the way from Nevada in the USA, who managed to get on the cast when you couldn't. Macca?
Yep.
It's all good, mate. It's all good. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you again next Sunday. Good night.
Night. Oh, thanks for listening.
No.